everyone. Hello. I'm so glad I decided to come a half hour early. I see you in the comments. Nice to see everyone. Let me see you. I can see you better with my glasses. Hey, Society Page. Hey, Mona. True Lifestyles. Oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, thanks for being here. Yes. Justice for Dan. Getting closer to being complete. Closer. Gosh, it's so good to see you all. Yay. I know Judy's coming. Okay, so here's the plan. So Steve is coming on at 6 as originally planned. And hey, Helen, you're very kind. Thank you. I just got back from running to Costco. I had like trips to make. Anyway, so plan is for Steve to come on in a half hour. And because of this whole Karen Reed, everything going on in the trials that we're watching this week, I just decided to come on a half hour early so I could chat with you guys because there's just so much. And I want to be able to talk with Steve and hear his thoughts. But I'm just bursting with thoughts. So I decided I don't want to cut him off. So I thought I'd come here quick and talk to you first. My throat's already sore. Okay, so let me scroll up here. Are you guys all watching Karen Reed or Charles Chad Daybell? What are you watching more? What's more interesting to you? Because they're both going on at the same time, or something else. Because there's all kinds of trials going on. And I wanted to bring up a couple of points. Let me do it this way. I'm pretty sure you're all following Madness and Motive. That's a YouTube channel. You familiar? Hi, Judy. Hi, Judy. Okay, Karen Reed. Only Karen Reed. Okay. Mostly Toad Dubell. Okay. Okay. Now I do know that I've got Hey Mona a little bit introduced to Karen Reed. Okay, great. Okay, Judy. So let me talk. Let me just make a couple points that I want to make before Steve gets here because I want to interview Steve so that everybody can get to know him better a little bit, just personally, and about what he does and how he started doing what he does and all that. But he's also interested in Karen Reed, so we're going to chat about Karen Reed. It'll be a quick interview, but let me just bring out a couple of things ahead of time that I found interesting. I'm just going to, and they're not in any order, and I might go back and forth. So first of all, you guys, what did you think of the opening statements? We're only on day 5, so I think it's still timely to talk about these opening statements. I want to say I was literally blown away at how do I say this? How unenthusiastic the prosecutor Lowley seemed. He so as a juror, and again, I always come at things as if I were sitting there on the jury, what I would be thinking. And so that's how I'm solo cups. So that's how I'm coming at this. But during that opening statement, I was almost lulled to sleep. It was so monotone and unexpressive. And that's okay. I mean, that's just probably who he is. But it was particularly noticeable when the defense came on, so clear and confident without being overbearing. And he came on with with the statement, Karen Reed was framed. Boom. Karen Reed was framed. And so it felt like it just woke me up. As if I was sitting on that jury, I'd be like, whoa, okay, now I'm paying attention. I wasn't paying attention when the prosecutor was going through all those details in the opening statement. I felt that was really a missed opportunity for him. Hi, Lorenzo. So I felt like it was really, really, really a missed opportunity. Obviously, the defense attorney is really good at what he does. So that was one of my thoughts. True crime wifey. Yeah, very dry, no pizzazz. And as a juror, wouldn't that make you kind of fall asleep? Lorenzo says hi. Okay, so the another note, and I'm just going to bring out some notes, and you guys you tell me what's most interesting to you. Okay, and yes, I do suck. I sucked you into it, didn't I? Hey, Mona. Also with some other trials. Okay, now I noticed that John O'Keefe, the victim, his brother and sister-in-law, who was friends with Karen, that they're sitting right by Karen. Now, I don't know if they just don't have a choice, but they're so close. I don't know if you could see that, but Karen's here and they're like at a 90-degree angle, but they would be like maybe 5 feet from her at maybe 6 feet, but I doubt it. But they're looking straight at her. And I mean, the jury's on the other side of that, and then it's just a kind of an awkward courtroom, and then the judge and the witness are over on the other side. So I don't think they can help but be looking right at Karen Reed. And one of the things that the sister-in-law said, and excuse me, I didn't write it down her name, but Karen Reed and John's sister-in-law were friends. They were friendly because they were, John was dating Karen and they had get-togethers and they were friendly. And she mentioned that Karen said to her that she'll never see her again. I think she knew John was dead. But the sister-in-law said, well, why? We're still friends, and I wondered if you guys felt like that was consciousness of guilt, or did you feel like it was because Karen was suicidal and just frantic? What did you think about that? Because I think it's one or the other. I don't know if you caught that. Yeah, it's a society page, says they're all on top of one another. I agree. It's crazy that this case even did make it to trial, and there was a long time when a lot of people didn't think it was going to. The paramedic that I'm going to talk to about, what's his name? One of the first paramedic had the really strong Boston accent. I did a little short about it. I don't know if you guys caught that. He was saying something and no one understood what he was talking about and everybody laughed. His name was Timothy Nuttall. I felt like when he came on, he was in the behavior. If you watch the behavioral panel at all, he was resume building right from the beginning. He was like tooting his own horn. He was talking about how he woke up in the middle of the night several times to check the weather. And then he got up and he got into work at 5:30 a.m. and he only had to be there at 8. And I just felt like, well, that's kind of like, are you really that good of a person? But the defense really did end up tearing him apart. And that part where he was saying, the defense was asking Timothy Nuttall, the paramedic, about whether he saw scratches, what injuries he saw on John's arms, because the injuries on John's arms are very controversial. They don't appear to be from a car hitting him. I mean, he has a head injury and that kind of thing could have been from a car, but the scratches on the arms seem very mysterious, and some people are saying they might have been from a dog bite or a dog scratching him. Well, the paramedic did not want to say that he wrote in his report or that he testified that there were scratches on his arms. He was trying to get out of it. And he was saying, well, scratches and abrasions, they go together. Well, they're two different things, first of all. He did not want to say there were scratches when there's pictures there. And I just think it's silly when witnesses try to be sneaky, try to build up their own resume, try to look like they're perfect, because when the defense gets a hold of them or they're cross-examined or whatever, it's going to be problematic. And so if I ever have to witness, man, I'm not going to try. I'm just going to be yes, no. I'm not going to try and sway the jury. And I think that's what he was trying to do. And so he was saying it was a scratch. Scratches and abrasions, they're the same thing. he was trying to diminish, to downplay these scratches on John's arms. And then he was saying, well, they're like furrows. And I mean furrows, but only he was saying pharaohs with his accent. And then the attorney was like, excuse me? He had to say it 3 different times. And then he actually made a claw mark. He's like, they're like pharaohs. They're like pharaohs. So he was actually showing his hand scratching his other arm to indicate that it was a scratch from a person or a dog. So he was too smart for his own good, or too good for his own good. So I thought that was interesting. And I thought that really just completely, he really needed rehabilitation after that. And I don't think he was ever rehabilitated. So I always look for that in witnesses, is, are they trying to come off as Mr. Reliability instead of just being reliable, instead of just letting their words speak for them. No, I mean, and I think the leaf blower in the snow was to was to was very good, very much going to destroy evidence. I thought that was such an odd thing. Yes, and Judy says, oh, these are moving fast. Judy says, yeah, those scratches were from a dog or a person for sure. Okay, so then let's see what else I came up with. I wanted to know if you guys think Karen might have been suicidal or had some kind of a mental break when this all happened, or was she maybe just so drunk and out of it? But clearly she was having, by many accounts, understandably, whether she was involved with hurting him or not, accidentally or whatever, she was having a meltdown, because she did say she was going to harm herself. And her father was, by testimony today, her father was quite concerned. So here's another thing I want to say that just is already driving me crazy about this trial. And because I like to learn, when I watch trials, I like to learn about the people. I like to learn about culture. I like to learn about everything that I can learn about. And certainly about law and how things work in the courtroom. This judge is running her courtroom in a very weird way. Number one, when there's an objection, the lawyers are not saying on what grounds they are objecting. So you don't know. They're just saying objection, and she's just saying sustained or overruled. She's not giving any grounds or explanation either. So I find that very murky and weird. And then, to avoid any kind of speaking objection or anything, basically getting out to the jury that she doesn't want, she's having a lot of sidebars, which I think is fine, but I'm not learning as much as I normally would during a trial about something that's very easy, that we can learn about during each trial. I find her extremely annoying for that reason. I also noted that, hold on, let me just look down here because I made some more notes. The judge will say, instead of overruled or sustained, oftentimes instead of overruled, she'll say something like, I'll let him have it, or he can have it, meaning to the attorney who's objecting, she'll respond to that attorney instead of saying overruled to the attorney that's been objected to so that he can move on, ask your question. That she's speaking to the one who made the objection and saying, I'll let him have it. Now, I've only seen her do that. I could be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to look for it more carefully in the next few weeks of the trial. I've only seen her do that when the prosecution objects. And I just find that extremely weird. You can have it. He can have it. That's how you say overruled. In other words, she's giving and she's taking. It just strikes me really it just annoys me. Okay, let's be honest. And then when she um, feels like it, like if something's been objected to a few times and the questioning continues, even though it's okay because it's been overruled and she let them have it, she'll then say things like, let's move on. You've made your point. And in the middle of the attorney doing the questioning, again, I've seen her do that or I've heard her do that with the defense attorney. I do not believe she may have done it once or twice with Lolly, but I find that also kind of just unprofessional and weird. What do you think? Have you guys noticed? I know a lot of people have complained about her breathing into the microphone, and hopefully I'm not doing that. That would be really annoying. If I ever do that, let me know. Okay, so hey, Mona, the judge soothingly rocks herself in the chair. And I think Judy's agreeing. She's probably seeing that. And Judy, as an attorney, I don't know. I find that just very odd. It's almost like whimsical. Oh, I've decided this now, and he can have it. And that's not how law works. There's rules, and it's supposed to be more technical than that. Okay, so let me quick go back. I want to get this out, and then we come back to the conversation. Um, let's see. Okay. Now, I do have some texts I want to read from some of my followers here. And I think, because I've been getting texts today like crazy. Um, but before I do that, I want to read something. Lawyer Lee has mentioned on her channel a couple of times that the statistics for prosecutors getting a conviction, getting a guilty verdict is like 99%. She did say that. And I was kind of blown away. She's blown away by it. And I think that we should be talking about that. That means that 99% of people who are convicted of and this is, I'm going to read this real quick. This statistic that I found, because she mentioned it a couple times and I was like, I'm going to research. I'm going to find out. So let me read it right from the source. In fiscal year 2022, only 290 of 71,954 defendants in federal criminal cases, this is federal court, or about 0.4%, less than 1%, went to trial and were acquitted, according to Pew Research Center analysis. And that was the latest available statistics from the federal judiciary. Now, is that the same at the state level? Probably. No reason to think it's not. Even 90% is higher. And then there's another add-on, another 1,379 went to trial and were found guilty, 1.9%. And I'm not sure what that meant. But anyway, but the bottom line is, according to Pew Research, fewer than 1% of federal criminal defendants are acquitted in 2022. So why am I saying that? Because a lot of people don't think Karen Reed should be on trial. Now that she's on trial, the chances of her being found guilty are very, very high, regardless of what we think, what we see, what anyone says. So I'm going to read some text after that. So Judy says, Jeremy Mutz said his office back when he was a prosecutor would only take on cases with a 90% chance of conviction. That makes sense. Right. So that probably is why they have a high success rate, because they're vetting these cases. They're not just prosecuting anybody. Well, that makes sense. But still, you can get a guilty conviction on innocent people. And that's what scares me. I'm not saying whether I think Karen is guilty or innocent, because I have no clue. So, okay. And Society Page says, I think Karen Reed will be convicted. I do. I just, based on statistics alone, you could guess that she would. I think her defense attorneys seem to be doing a great job. My biggest question is about the glass The cocktail glass, and what was the other one? The shoe, but there was another. Oh my gosh, what was it? Oh, I forgot what the second one was, but I thought it was interesting when I was listening to testimony today that the lieutenant said, we just assumed the glass came from the bar because they were coming from the bar. Now, I thought that was weird because why would you think? Do people in Boston just bring their glasses with them into the cars as a rule? Or is it just cops that do that? Are they riding around drunk with cocktail glasses in their cars as a rule? Why would you think? Why would you just think that that glass came from the bar, not from the home that was 10 feet away where they were having a party? So I thought that was really strange. I really thought that was strange. Okay, so, and then Mona says she's surprised she'll be convicted. And Judy says, without having watched half the trial so far, my guess is no conviction. I feel like so far, if I had to take a guess, they might get her on the involuntary. They might, the guilt, I think jurors to some extent feel like they have to fall in line. I don't know. I could be wrong. I feel like jurors are not reminded enough to presume someone is innocent. I think that's a hard thing to do when they've been arrested, when they have these charges in front of them, to be like, but they're innocent. Because like Judy said, the prosecutors are only taking cases that they really think they're going to get a conviction on. So they don't think they're innocent. So how can the jury think they're innocent? It's in, and then the judge, especially when you have a judge that's pretty obviously in lockstep with the prosecution, and we know sometimes that happens. The judges can lean, and they, whether they think they're doing it or whether we're right in the thinking they're doing it, I don't know, but it's very hard to presume someone innocent when they're sitting there with all those charges, with all those attorneys around them. So, okay. All right, now let me see if I can go back up. Travis Rudolph should have never gone to trial in Florida. He was acquitted because he defended him after being set up for a robbery from a woman. All this was known before the indictment. Okay, Travis Rudolph. I can't remember which one. That wasn't the police officer, right? Yeah, there are definitely some. I don't think Karen Reed should have gone to trial just because of some of the things you guys are bringing up, and you're going so fast I can't catch them all. Because of the police work was very questionable. Very, very questionable. Hey, is Carla here? Hey, Carla. Okay, let me scoot up. Let me scoot all the way to the top. I'm going to get to your comments, but I want to go to the top. Carla, should I read your text or you want to type it out? Let me read Carla's text. I've got a couple texts. I've got texts from Carla, from Katie, who might or might not be here. So let's grab Carla. Carla said, she said many things. We have a lot of texts. Okay, sorry. We have two different text numbers, so I might not have the right one. Okay. Carla said, if they find her guilty, it will be such a travesty and miscarriage of justice. Okay, so without seeing the whole trial, I'm leaning that way so far. It just seems kind of questionable. And Katie said, here's my biggest thought. I have no idea who murdered John O'Keefe. And if it was Karen, we will never know for sure because there is so much reasonable doubt because of all the conflict and the horrible, horrible in caps investigation. So I think we're all kind of on the same page here. So let me show some of these comments. It is. It's nice to have everybody together. The gang's back in town. Oh. Oh my gosh, I haven't even seen. I've got to catch up on society page. Oh, Steve's here. Perfect timing. Okay. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. What's going on?
Good to see you. We got caught up. I spit out all of my things that I had to say before you got here because I wanted to give you the floor, and
Oh
I
no,
don't.
thank you for having me. I'm really honored. This should be fun.
Okay, well, and we have hello, Meve. Meve Mohen is here.
Yeah,
Okay, and that is so sweet. I think that is so endearing. That little nickname that you have, and that's from the kids, right?
no, that was more like Joel. I think, I, I mean, it was more. Joel started it because I think I remember saying something like, "Someone whose name rhymes with Meve Mohen was the one who did that," or something. And that's where I think he just thought it was funny. And I
And
don't know.
it's stuck. And it's stuck. Okay, well, let me give you a proper introduction. Okay,
Like,
so for those who don't know you, or for those who might be replaying later, Steve Cohen is the what should we call you? I want to say the brains, but you're some of the talent behind the scenes of surviving the survivor, but it goes much beyond that, and I'm fascinated by it. And we know you're really good friends with Joel
yeah,
and his family, right? And Carm. So send our love to them. And but so Steve, does you do all the booking, right, for all of Joel's
yeah.
guests?
I mean,
And
and
that
sometimes it's a push towards us, rather than a poll. But, like now that we've been doing it, we get guest suggestions or people reach out, you know.
mhm,
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely think that's obviously important. I mean, that's a background that I've had, but yeah, and I think, um, Joel and Carmela and Ileana and Mario, who's Ileana's brother, does a lot of the audio, and I think does all the audio, and we're all working really, really hard, and I think it takes a lot of people to get things done. You know what I mean? I see how much you're doing, and imagine you're booking your own guest. Imagine if you had somebody doing that or doing your thumbnails. I mean, you're really excellent, and I think we've proven to be a good team, but I definitely think it's important, behind the scenes, just to be able to pick the right stories, the right guests. Then sometimes your best customers are your repeat customers, and we
mhm,
can go back to them. But I don't like Joel had some lofty ambitions when we started, and we started during the pandemic, and then I think that I was the one who pushed us to I was the one who pushed us to do the Markel story, about
right,
and
right.
then I think from there we recognized that we had something in true crime because we then moved. I remember there were the Idaho student murders, and like Joel and we do have a lot of experience, and I, 25, 30 years in TV, radio, like you know, and so I think that definitely helps. I mean, you get a lot of reps, and we've done it more than people who haven't done it. So, like, and I think, yeah, it's worked out. Like, I think 2 and 2 is 5 or 6, like with Joel in the beginning. And then Ileana is also a broadcaster, and she's incredibly smart. Carmela is unique. I mean, today, for example, it's Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Right.
And, um, and yeah, I'm glad Judy's on because I think Judy does an excellent job, and she had a really terrific videos the other day. Like she's doing all kinds of creative stuff. I mean, she's a little loco,
Yes.
but and we've talked about it, and I think she's great. And I think it's a nice community of people. I wouldn't have met you, wouldn't have met Judy, wouldn't have met True Lifestyles, Fancy Fiction, Katie, Cool Lady. Judy was nice enough to have me on with Jay from The Shaming of Jay, who does a really great job. Carl Steinbeck, so and John Steinbeck. Obviously, we met the Markells, and so again, I've said it before, but I think you kind of like, yeah, I thought I knew at the time, like when we were doing the Markel stuff, like it's kind of a version of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's kind of like you have to kind of give people what they want, not what you want. You have to be bartenders and serve people what they want. So, I mean, I was particularly, interested in the Markel story, but I also felt like it fit with them who are in Florida. They're also Jewish. And it had when people talk about the four C's, like, characters, consequences, conflict, and comedy. And it had, especially when you see Judy do it,
Yeah.
Judy goes the extra mile, like the details
Oh,
separate, and so do you. I mean, your graphics or your whole interrogation stuff, and I think it makes a difference. And I think there's an alchemy where maybe things click, at a certain point. But I see the effort, and I appreciate what you do, and you're there. And I think, yeah, I just sometimes the last key opens the lock as far as like outward recognition of it. But getting back to the Markel case, I also knew that Wondery had Over My Dead Body and had 10 million views. So you think like, okay,
right.
if we could service those people who aren't getting a new Wondery podcast or other stuff, and you peel off a couple of them and you kind of grow your tribe or community. But I don't think I would have ever thought it was going to be as popular as it is now and as we are. But I think, and I've said this to the wonderful Waldman family, it's not how good you are, it's how good you want to be. The biggest room in the world is room for improvement. And I think there's kind of you have to have kind of just a balance between like, hey, I'm doing the best I possibly could do and enjoying that rather than always be worried about what you don't have, seeing the glass as half full,
That's
being
right.
worried about what everybody else is doing. It's the old like comparison's the thief of joy. Like we have to focus on what we're doing, do the best job we can, and remember why we're into it. And everything else I think will fall into place, with it.
I love that. That's one of the things I love about you, and I want people to hear from you is that you have all these little pearls of wisdom. You've just dropped a few just in that little answer that you gave, and there's just so much depth to all of that. And it is true. I like for me personally, I'm not a full time YouTuber. That was never my intention. I would love to come on weekly, but I can't, I try. And then if I have stuff going on in my life, I don't. And then I come back. And if my numbers change, well, that's just naturally what's going to happen. But I kind of just do me, I do it what I want to do, something a little bit different. I feel like bringing out the interrogations and the body
Green
cam.
Bay Packer stuff. I mean,
Well, that's separate. But yeah, bringing up the body cams and the interrogations, a lot of times will end up in a trial, but they don't end up obviously for a lot of reasons in their entirety. Like the whole
yeah,
5 hour. If Wendy's interrogation ever is shown, I'll be amazed in any
right.
of the trials. But it won't be the whole 5 hours. And so, as a potential juror, you're only seeing the little snippets. But I also like to think about what I was just talking about with the chat before you came on, which is that whole presumption of innocence
Yeah.
that is lacking. So for me, my channel is a little bit different because I'm not just out here saying lock them up. I mean, it's more nuanced.
You're a better person than I am. I mean, I, wow. I mean, I think, and it's a fine line that we have, right? Like, because for all those years, Joel and I were more formally trained. And even though the lines are blurry now and they're, where Fox is clearly biased or CNN has their own perspective or MSNBC, I just never felt that way. Obviously had my own biases, but and I wasn't like pretentious, like I'm a journalist or,
Hmm.
but I just didn't, like I wasn't there trying to curry favor with any particular political, and we would deal with in your network news, you're dealing with presidents, Senate, you name it. But I think that, and this was something that we struggled with. We had that interview with Daniel Rashbaum, the Adelson's
Right,
attorney.
right,
And
right.
there were people who were like, well, if we interviewed him or you gave him a platform. And I and we were acknowledging, like, we're pro Markel. We think these Adelsons are the worst people in the world. Like, they're scumbags. But, he's doing his job, Rashbaum. People want to hear from him. And, so I think it's maybe advocacy journalism. Like when we do a story like the Ellen Greenberg story, and for those of your listeners who don't know, like this was a 27-year-old woman who in 2011 was stabbed. She was found stabbed 20 times by her fiance. And at first they called it a homicide, then they called it a suicide. So we're compassionate for the Greenbergs. And if you want to know what I think is really interesting, my parents have a place in Florida, and their next door neighbor is Ellen Greenberg's uncle. It's a very small world. So,
Yeah.
And so it kind of, we all have our own stories of heartache, or, being a victim, or, whether you're Katie Kool-Aid, whether you're whether, you're so many of the people who are drawn to true crime, myself, and you've had instances where you feel like, wow, you've suffered an injustice. And I think that was one of the things that leads you to these stories. And I think that's part of it, where you'd like to see there be justice. You'd like to see maybe you'd like to be for other people what you'd want people to be for you. Like if you were the Markels and you lost your son and you had to watch these people live their best lives, driving Ferraris, going on vacations, posting on social media, being the toast of the town, and yet so clearly being involved in your son's life's loss and all the just indignities they suffered, and just these awful people. So I give people like Judy and Carl and Jay now, new people on the block in fancy fiction, and you credit for calling these people out, perhaps more stridently than I would, and just to say, these are awful people, and people who, enable them deserve to be called out, and then you think, like, I think of, like, in my life, like, for example, when I was growing up, my sisters and I, we all had a pediatrician, and my dad's a physician, and he was friends with my dad. He was at all our bar mitzvahs and, family occasions, and he turned out to be a pedophile. And he was New York Times, like the people who went after Cosby went after him, and he kind of escaped justice. But my dad wasn't like, hey, he's our buddy, he was like, hey, you crossed the line, buddy. And there's that much smoke, there's that fire, there's fire. So I don't know, and I've had friends who crossed the line, and I sometimes think of, like, Rabbi Harold Kushner, who wrote When Bad Things Happen to Good People. He also said, like, how good do you have to be? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll take friends, warts and all, but if it's like a tumor, like, you got to just do a biopsy and just kind of move on,
Right.
So, and it's kind of like, if you're kind to the cruel, you're cruel to the kind. So I appreciate that kind of advocacy, and that's what journalism effectively is supposed to be, right? You're supposed to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. That's what it's supposed to be. So yeah.
So what got you started? You're the booking agent, obviously, for the best guests in true crime, and so, and Joel it has a really, I mean, aside from what he does with his mom, with Carm, with the survivor part, he has a niche too, because he's an actual television journalist, or at least he was, and so it's a little bit different. He's able to bring on attorneys quite a bit, and other crime specialists, whether it's DNA folks or whatever. But it's a really interesting marriage and choice that he went beyond Markel into other true crime, and we're glad for it. But what's and so that's great. And I think everybody has a little bit different way of. So there's room for everybody. There's room for everybody.
I think there's room for everybody. I think Judy does her own thing, mentor lawyer, Carl Steinbeck. And I always just felt like I'm not I think True Lifestyles does a great job. And I think
Mhm.
there's, you know, like I remember one time like Dennis Miller was asked about TV and he was saying, like people could be like, oh, everything should be masterpiece theater. And he's like, no,
Right.
sometimes it could be Jerry Springer, it could be, BBC, it could be Jersey
Mhm.
Shore, it could be, PBS NewsHour. I mean, there's different strokes for different folks and,
Mhm.
different things for different people. And if you don't like what we're doing, you don't have to watch or whatever it is. And I say that to Judy too, because all of these people, I'm sure you've gotten some hate, believe it or not, like you're minding your own business in San Diego or wherever, you know. And
Yeah.
so I think that the nail that sticks out gets hammered. That's the cost of doing business. And
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like it's everybody. You're not going to get unanimity of appeal, but I think I think it always takes more than one person to do something that's effective. Do you know what like whenever I've worked with different people, I'd worked with so my background really quick, I was in TV.
Yeah, I wanna hear all about this. Yes, tell us
I
your
mean, I'll just
background.
tell you kind of quickly. I mean, like um after college, and I'd worked at the student newspaper in college, and then I I got a job at radio in New York, WCBS radio. Then I went to network radio, some from local radio to network radio to, to network TV. And then I went to local TV, which was different. And, all of those places have their merits and demerits. And then in 2017, there was a guy named James Altucher who was really an excellent podcaster, one of the smartest people I've ever met. Like he was really a bright guy, and I knew he had asked me to work for him full time. And I was ready to leave TV. And it was really an amazing opportunity for me because, you know, and it's fine because he wasn't a big sports person like you are. But I remember saying, dude, we can be like Belichick and Brady. Like, like different people need different things. Like James, in some ways, it's like Joel or any good partnership where you complement each other. And James was really bright. I knew he was interesting and interested. Like I could bring any number of people to him. And I remember when he was talking about hiring me, and that was really a pivotal point in my life because I felt like as podcasts evolve, now there's 3 million of them. Before in TV, you might have had a sense of scarcity and you might have looked at it and said, well, what else could I do? I could work at CBS, I could work at NBC, I could work at ABC, I could work at MSNBC, maybe current TV, maybe Fox. And then now all of a sudden there's people like James, who was a hedge fund guy, he was a grandmaster in chess. He wrote 24 books, and he was interested in everything, and he owned a comedy club. So I would put comedians on with him, or, it really was a great indoctrination to it. And unlike TV, where you just constantly feel under the gun and just deadlines, and you have to be in a studio and you have to work with all these other people. And I felt like, I mean, it's kind of like that old joke, like the guy says, "Oh, sick and tired of shoveling elephant shit," and then people are like, "Why don't you quit?" And then they say, "Well, and leave show business," So I think it's the gum was losing its flavor for me, and when I left, I felt like I had like an extra 60 hours a week because it's onerous, like working with other people, collaborating with people, then feeling like you have to compete with them for advancement, or it's just it's I always tried. I think successful people focus on the flowers, not the weeds. Like I focused on all the stuff that I got to do, and, but I think that, successful people embrace change. And I think this new medium, it made me more valuable because there were lots of people like James, who were like, yeah, I'd love to have the people you can bring from your years of experience. And I knew, and it was a different environment too, because I think when you're in TV, you always feel like, well, geez, I'm not allowed to do anything else. I can't work for this other person, or I'm not able to monetize this. And then when there was no strings on me. So it's like you could do like all kinds of things over there. Like you could really be entrepreneurial and do different things. And, just a lot. But I think successful people embrace change. You figure out, okay, here are the different things you can do. Like, James wanted to write a book, Think Like a Billionaire. And so I was able to book like 15 billionaires on the show. And we use that to make the content for a book, and I just think, and he was very resourceful, and kind of like Jay-Z says, there's a million ways to get it. And you have to just figure out different ways to do things, and so that's, the world seems bigger once you get out of that bubble, of TV. And for me, it did. And then after I worked with James, and I had a bunch of other people approach me, who wanted that same kind of situation, where, like, I feel like personally, like, it's harder to get the groceries than to cook them. I felt like that is one of the differences that make a difference. And it's not just having big names, but it's kind of when do you have, how do you have, it's kind of like a pill. Like if you're giving somebody when they're really sick, it's more impactful, like timing. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a while. I feel confident
Yeah.
in doing it, but I try to, yeah, just think of different angles to cover a story, not to just reach you the same cabbage. I try and have interesting people. And it's kind of like, how do you get people to a party? You invite them early, you invite them often, you be a good host, you give
Mhm.
them party favors, and you tell them who else is going to be at the party. You
Right.
rinse, reheat, do it. And I always felt confident. I remember when I was in TV, they were like, do you think you can get so and so? And I was like, if I tell them it's Easter, they're going to start hunting for eggs. Yeah. I, you know what I mean? Like, I always feel that way, And you have to have a degree of confidence, and the old, like, if you're going
Right.
after Moby Dick, bring tartar sauce, just know, like, and have an idea,
Right.
and I was
Yeah.
like this in college. I remember, I was doing something with some friends who were athletes, and we were going to do like a promotion. And the guy was listening to me on the phone, and he just was kind of like, who is this guy? And he goes, Steve. And this was like a big boxing promoter in Detroit. I went to school in Michigan. And he's like, Steve, if you think you could sell it. And I said, dude, I could sell a pogo stick to a kangaroo. And he's like, I want to see your face. He goes, I want to see your face when you say this. So we drove into inner city Detroit. And it was an interesting meeting. The guy happened to be like, this guy, Tommy Hearns, who was a Motor City Hitman. It was his manager. And it was fun to like
Wow.
meet him, and to just, I think you always have to have a little bit of bravado and showmanship, but you have to make people feel important, and you have to feel like what you're doing is important. And so, yeah, I mean, but I think, I, yeah, I'm proud of what we've been doing. I'm proud of how, we've brought more attention, to certain of these people and help comfort them. And I think the thing that appealed to me about a lot of this is, and I've always felt like you want to be useful to people, you don't want to use them. And I felt like, uh, um, you know, Judy's funny, like, uh, you know, that, you know, I remember I used to work, I remember, like, she's referring to Purim as a Jewish holiday, which is kind of like,
Mhm.
and
Right.
I used to always play basketball with this Israeli, and he was like, "You Jews in the diaspora are really soft. I've been up for 5 hours already, And then I would score a basket because you think every day is Purim, um, and so then I remember I picked up that phrase from him, and I remember the only person who ever disputed that. There's this woman named Shelley Ross, who is, she's kind of an infamous or legendary television figure. She was like at ABC, she was at CBS, and she was the executive producer of the early show. And I remember we were trying to do stuff. And she was like, Steve, did you get this? And I was like, I tried, not every day is Purim. And she's like, yes, it is. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I was kind of like, some days, some days you're drinking wine, some days you're crushing grapes. Like some days are the field, some days are the bug. Like I don't know what to tell you, And so, but she was tough, and she was really hard driving, and I think, but yeah. Um,
Do you consider yourself more of a behind the scenes person than a behind the scenes?
Yeah.
I consider myself a behind the scenes person from my career. I just was curious if you.
It's interesting that you should say that. I don't think any of us should limit ourselves, right? Like I was definitely very influenced by, Wayne Dyer's book, How to Be a No Limit Person, Your
Oh,
Erroneous Zones. And they were very effective. And, and I can answer your co-host, Judy, Asian American Legal Focus's question. And Judy, by the way, a wonderful person. I just want everybody to know that. Like,
I
just very,
agree. She's the
very
best.
generous. I remember like the first time Joel and Carmela got on court TV, she was excited for them. She didn't have the green eyed
Yes.
monster. Like
No.
she was
No.
like, good for them. I'm glad more people could talk about the Markells. So
That's
she
right.
her heart's in the right place. She's always supportive of other people. She's always commenting,
That's right.
and even like when she gets big gets, she wants other people to have them or wants everybody to do well. And so kudos to her. I don't know if I've said this. Like I remember one time, like a guest, we had BB Newirth who played Lilith on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she wound up being very nice, but I remember doing a pre-interview with her. She was in this movie called The Divorce, and she was and she just seemed short with me. Like, do you know what I mean? And I felt like maybe she didn't love the movie, or maybe she was upset. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it. Maybe, Catherine Zeta-Jones got Chicago and she's doing the Divorce with Kate Hudson. I don't know. But I remember she was kind of snippy, and I said, listen, I said, I'm beat Al Sassoon. If you don't look good, I don't look good. And I said, and so I remember telling her, like, after that segment, I'm going to go in that control room and I'm either going to take a bow or take my medicine. And I said, I do not want to take my medicine. And then afterwards, she said, Steve, did you get your, and I felt like she appreciated like me.
Good.
She was laughing about it. I mean, I'm trying to think.
Good.
I remember one of the cooler things was one day I remember seeing this very attractive woman and she was just hanging out by herself. And I said to our kind of like manager outside, hey, who's the honey? Who's she? And he says, oh, she's just an actress. She has to follow us around, for a role. I said, wait a minute, that's Rachel McAdams. And so Rachel McAdams was playing a morning show producer, and she wanted to follow people around. So I was the first person she saw. So she was following me around. And the whole time I just kept making jokes about like Wedding Crashers. Like, I was repeating lines from Wedding Crashers. And then, I was saying like, I'm not saying to marry me. I'm just saying, don't marry him. Like Owen Wilson's line. And then one time I said to her, so when you got the script for Mean Girls, you probably were like, I don't need to go to some high school follow some Mean Girl. I can find this already. Like, and I thought that was one of the cooler things because I actually found her to be a very nice person. And then, yeah, I think, and I appreciate people who, come by themselves, they don't need an entourage, they're just decent. And I think I said this with Joel the other day. Like, I remember the tennis player Roger Federer was really nice, and his wife was right there, and he just was signing autographs. Very cool. Steven Van Zandt, I thought was really, really nice and disarming. And so yeah, I think that was a great experience. I think, I've always felt like you bloom where you're planted. You do as best you can where you are, and then you just keep moving. And
Yeah. I like it. I like it. We like what you do. We appreciate you.
thank
And
you.
yeah, I know you've been on some other shows, but I don't remember ever hearing that much about your background, what you do, where you came from,
Well,
that
thank you
kind
for
of
asking.
stuff.
I appreciate it. But
Yeah.
I guess, but it's also like you asked me, like, do I consider myself a background person? So I don't know. I think that in TV it's different, 30 years ago. And I think like James Aldish, I give a lot of credit to being influenced on me. Before I worked with him in 2013, he wrote a really good book called Choose Yourself. And the idea was, and Seth Godin has written similar stuff where it's like the gatekeepers now in 2010, 2020, 2024 are gone. Like Justin Bieber became a music star just on YouTube, and then somebody discovered him, or the woman who wrote 50 Shades of Grey, or Dawn DeKisto, or Judy, saying Asian American legal focus, like you can choose yourself. You don't need the gatekeepers.
Right.
And so my point is, like, when we were in TV, I think that there was a kind of like a caste system. Do you know what I'm saying? There was the talent, the
Right.
Brian Trumbolls, the Harry Smiths, the Hannah Storms, the Julie Chens of the world, and then
Mm-hmm.
there was us. And then it was kind of like a lot of my colleagues started doing speaking engagements or started doing other stuff. And, so I think it's, I don't think you have to limit yourself, and I guess getting back to Wayne Dyer, who was influential to me, like, I'm careful. I'm big, like, on, I don't always adhere to it, but it's the old, like, if you put a plant in a jar, it's going to take the shape of a jar. But if you put it in a room, maybe it takes the shape of the whole room and blooms. So you don't want to be, you want to be a no limit person. You don't want to self reject. It's kind of like Wayne Dyer in the Erroneous Zones, would you see example, if you say, Steve, come dance with me. Well, I'm not a dancer. Well, how do you become one? Like, how do you change? Like, how do you have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? And that's something I think about a lot. Like, the people I admire who have growth mindsets, like, if you have a fixed mindset, one of the characteristics is you want kind of affirmation or validation or approval, right? Like, I work at CBS, I work at ABC, I went to University of Virginia, I did whatever. But if you have a growth mindset, you want to just reach your potential. Like, you want to become the best you possibly can be. And that's what I was getting at earlier with, like, compare despair, compare sleep for joy. And, so and I think also one of the things that afflicted me, in TV, like, because is, remember Jim Rohn, the motivational speaker, had said, work harder on yourself than you do your job. If you work hard on your job, you have a living. If you work hard on yourself, you have a life. So I try and put things in perspective. I try and, handle anxiety, habitual need to kind of please everybody, or perfectionism. And then you kind of just focus on, doing your best, and, and just what's important, your loved ones around you, those that know you best should love you most, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean,
Well, I think being behind the scenes, for me personally, the reason I brought it up is because I used to do, design and costume design. I never really wanted to be on the stage. I did a little bit of set design, that kind of thing. But so to me, it takes such a huge cast of people. You're right, the talent and then everybody else. But the everybody else is a huge cast of people, and I kind of take pride in that part of it. And I just wondered and so I didn't realize it until I was older that I really am a behind the scenes person by nature too. I'm artistic, I'm quiet, that's my thing. So I don't think it's a negative or a limiting thing, but I was just curious what you would say about that, because you have such,
I
yeah.
mean, think, because look, like, your co-host, Asian American Legal Focus, like, she was saying, like, who else am I working on? In addition to
Yes.
Joel, I work with Chris Hansen, is well known for To Catch a Predator, and we just got a Clue nomination for CrimeCon next month. I mean, I try and work with different people. I've worked with a number of really interesting people. There's a guy, like, a bunch of mental health people, which is apropos because I need a checkup from the neck up. But they've kind of influenced me. I mean, I work with a psychiatrist, Pooja Lakshmi, who I think is terrific. She wrote a really good book called Real Self-Care. I work with a guy, Deepak Panisetti, the Child Care Center of New York. I work with Robert Brace, is the only Black-owned gym in New York, is an ordained minister. Like, I try and pick interesting people to work with, and a guy named Paul Ollinger, who was one of Facebook's first employees, stand-up comedian. I mean, I'm not a mercenary. I try and, like, no, but I'm saying, like, I've had people approach me to try and partner with different people, and, I try to, work hard and have people that I enjoy working with and I could learn from, So,
Right.
like I worked with Amy Morin, who's got one of the top TED Talks of all time, and she wrote a book called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And that really helped me a lot. Like, they were things like mentally strong people don't dwell on the past. You don't give too much to people too much power. You're not afraid of alone time. You're not afraid of taking calculated risks. And I need sometimes to go back to that and remind myself. And so the people I work with, I'd like to see edify me, make me better,
Mhm.
because you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time
Right.
with. And so I'm careful about that.
Right.
I was listening, I'm a big sports fan, and I do a podcast. There's a basketball player, former basketball, Bill Cartwright. And so I
Yeah.
work with Bill a lot. I do a podcast
Oh,
with Bill, and Bill played with, Michael Jordan, Chicago Bull, and Bill is amazing and fortunate, to call him a good friend. And we've done interesting things. But I
mhm.
think I was listening to John Calipari's talk, and he said, you could have a bad deal with a good person, but you're never going to have a good deal with a bad person. And I think sometimes obviously you it's too late before you learn that, but you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
and I but I Bill has a lot of wisdom, and uh and I think a lot about Bill will always say, don't make sense of nonsense. Or he was talking about, like, when he's at University of San Francisco now, and they lost to Gonzaga, and he said something like, you know if you focus on the loss, it's not going to be helpful. If you focus on what you learned from it, and we preach what we need, because I have a hard time doing that myself, because I dwell on things, and we
Mm.
all do. Like, you could have 50 great comments, and you have one wingnut or just misanthrope that says something, and we focus on it. So I think, again,
Sure.
you know, I don't know, you just kind of but I think, like I've said this before, but and Judy, again, is very generous, like your co-host, and thanks for the kind words, hey Mona. But I think that um, when we were James Altucher, Richard Branson, we did an interview with him, and James said to him, "What if you're not a billionaire? What if you're not, handsome? What if you're not extroverted? What could people do?" And he said people want to be around people who are positive. People want to be around people who praise you. People want to be around people who look for the best in other people. And I think it's something, believe it or not, like, I took that to heart, and I was kind of like, and it's kind of like, there was great commencement speech by Jeff Bezos. And, like, he was talking about when he was 9 years old, like, his grandmother was smoking, and he like, he was so smart, and he was like calculating, like, okay, if you keep smoking 1-2 cigarettes a day in life expectancy, you're going to die when you're 71. And his grandmother started crying, and his grandfather said, Jeff, it's a lot easier to be clever than kind. And I think about that. Do you know what I mean? I think about, like, the cynic knows the cost of everything, the value of nothing. It's cynicism is what passes for insight among mediocre people. And so I try to just keep moving, stay positive, and I don't know, but yeah, but yeah,
I like it. I love all your insights. I always love
thank
chatting with
you.
you.
Yeah,
That's why I
you're a good egg. No, I enjoyed chatting with you. Up to you now, I'm famous. I'm podcast fame. I'm excited.
So what's your favorite sport? Is it basketball your favorite, or do you love all sports?
Um, yeah. In the words of Curtis Blow, basketball is my favorite sport. I like the way they dribble up and down the court. Remember that rap song? That was a great song. They're playing basketball, and then Bow Wow did a version of it. I think I like basketball most. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. When I was younger,
it's fun.
we grew up in Long Island, and we used to watch New York Islanders all the time. And that was in their heyday in the '80s. They won 4 Stanley Cups. So it's interesting, because, like, I try and listen to a lot of things, and I was listening to David Spade's I like his podcast with Dana Carvey,
Mm.
Fly on the Wall a lot, and they talked to a lot of people regarding Saturday Night Live, and most people, and I imagine it's true with you too, like it's the one you liked the best was when you were like 15 or 16, right? Like, I don't
Right.
know. Like,
Right.
I think, like, in my case, I would have been Eddie Murphy and those people,
Right.
And then on
Hmm.
the society page, I like both. I like your Indiana Hoosiers society page, and the 76, which was before my time there. They had their undefeated team with Ken Benson, Scott May, like their 81 team with Isaiah Thomas and Randy Whitman. Uh, your 84 team with Steve Alford, 87 team. But I like to, yeah, I definitely, I kind of feel like, remember the movie Hitch where she says to Kevin James, she's like, "Are you a Knicks fan?" And he's like, "They're good." So, but I mean, I like now they're good again. So
I was going to ask you if you're a Knicks fan
I like
because
the
you're
Knicks. Like,
from,
when I
yeah.
was growing up, I mean, I remember Bill, who I later became obviously close friends with, but I was a big Bernard King fan growing up in New York, in the
Hmm.
80s. He
Hmm.
was, we were like, Bernard was God. And I think you like when you're a kid, like those are like we grew up in Long Island, which was like 45 minutes away from New York City. And you take the subway, other subway, you take the Long Island Railroad, you're right there at Madison Square Garden. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then college sports, I went to a big college school, like sports school, University of
Right.
Michigan. So I I follow their uh, teams pretty closely.
Yeah.
Not like some lunatics like my friends, who are like insane. But I'm in like these and I'm like, I can't follow it this closely. I'm sorry. Um,
I don't do group text. I have certain people that text me every Packers game. I can't help it, but it's family. I wasn't I was not really. I would like to do sport. I was more active, but it wasn't until COVID that I started watching sports more. And I became an absolute nut with the Packers. It had to be the Packers because I'm from Wisconsin, so I had to pick them. I couldn't pick like the Chargers or something out here. And then when I grew up, I did enjoy watching basketball. My brother was a good athlete, both football and basketball. And Bucks game, we would go to the Bucks game, and it was Lou Alcindor before he was
wow.
groomed. Yeah, that's how old I am.
No, but Oscar Robertson, yeah.
Right.
And I'm a big sports fan, and it's interesting seeing these different people. Like I probably basketball, that society page who all of you, I'm sure you're familiar with his work, but it's spectacular. It's really,
Oh yes, and
I
Society
could have
Page.
like given him a shout out earlier because and
Oh, for sure.
everybody does do different things, and it's very
Exactly.
creative. And
Yes.
I never felt like, I don't feel that kind of like, I'm not worried about what everybody else is doing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I want to get along with everybody, playing the same sandbox with people, but I'm not. I think we're gonna do what we're gonna do. Have a society page. Remember Lou Alcindor? Well, I'll tell you something
We're all
funny.
showing our age.
Well, I got to know Kareem afterwards. Society
Hmm.
page, and uh, and I've done a bunch of stuff with him. And like he came on CBS Early Show, and I was there a bunch of times, and Good Day New York, and then with James Altucher came on, and obviously exceptional intellect, really amazing. And I read a bunch of his books. He also, Kareem, like, wrote a book on you know he wrote a book on like about Sherlock Holmes. I mean, he's a real scholar. Like, he wrote about the Tuskegee Airmen. You know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think it wasn't easy for him. Like, he faced a lot of racism, and
Yes.
and just being tall. And
Uh,
although one time at this conversation society page, I think you'll appreciate this, because I remember interacting with him, and I said to Bill Cartwright, I said, "Hey, he could be a little aloof, And Bill is like, "Well, he's 7 feet tall." And I felt like the Seinfeld, where Elaine says to George, she's like, "You don't want to go out with her because she's bald. And she's like, you're bald. And it's like, you're 7 feet tall, Bill. Like, it's not like you're, 4'10". Like, you're also tall and you have a different personality, and I just remember getting a kick out of that. But yeah, I think I it's funny. I have a friend who's from Madison, and I was talking to him, and he likes obviously the Wisconsin teams. He likes Milwaukee Bucks, Milwaukee Brewers, Packers. Uh, um,
Yeah.
and um, I'm happy to answer Himona.
Although Wisconsin, sorry. And so for anyone who's listening and not watching, there's comments on the chat. I keep
Yeah,
distracting poor Steve. And we
no,
have to talk about why you're interested in Karen Reed too, but that's
yeah,
hey
for sure.
Mona wants to know, hey, she says, do not let Steve go without asking about Rash Bomb. They want to know how you got Rash Bomb booked
Okay,
on
sure.
Joel's show.
Yeah,
I think that was the question. Yeah.
no, which is great. I mean, I think we had asked him. Obviously, you miss all the shots you don't take. And by the way, I think, like, for example, God bless her. I think Roberta Glass happens to do a very good job. I listen to her stuff. She works really hard. And I remember hearing her kvetch about how we got her or whatever. And I feel like sometimes a kiss is just a kiss. Sometimes a rose is just like, sometimes you just ask. I don't know, but I mean, we got to know him. Like, we had a pre-conversation about, he said nothing was off limits, but we saw him when we were in court. I mean, again, we have a pretty good following. We've had Georgia Kappelman on, we had the Markells. He knew he'd have a good audience. I think it's interesting that he didn't do, my point about, like, Roberta Glass, God bless her, is that who does an excellent job. Like, I've been listening to her a lot on Karen Reed. She has a point of view, she has a perspective. And like, different people are like, well, if we interviewed them, we would have done a different job, better. And I felt like, well, if I was yellow and had wheels, I'd be a taxi. Like, did you even ask him to join you? First of all, second of
Right.
all, like, what is recommending you to do him over? Like, you're gonna, like, I don't think we were obsequious towards him. I think we asked tough questions. I think Joel prepared a lot. You have to give somebody a forum, and I think people are always gonna have negative things to say about it or whatever, but I think mostly it was positive. I mean, I think that, look, I watched Georgia Kappelman's, like, cross of Charlie a ton of times. I remember for a while I was really obsessed with it, and it was helping me. I don't know, like, I would listen to before I go to sleep, where I used to listen to a lot of sports radio, so much so, I don't know about you guys, hey Mona and Judy and Society Page, but so much, like, I kept getting pop-up ads for, like, dental, dentist and teeth replacement, and I wonder it's because, Charlie Adelson was a dentist, you know what I mean? Because, like, I don't know if that was calling it up because the algorithm had that. And by the way, like, I think Roberta Glass does a great job. Like, I listen to a lot of stuff, but I was saying, it's like, it's not that, it's not, what am I call it? It's, I think that, it's, I think, like, you're gonna, it's kind of like, I like that Denzel Washington speech, where he said, if you hang around a barbershop, you're going to get a haircut. Like, I've always, like, I was effective, I felt, particularly at local TV, where I felt like I had already been in network TV, and I felt like people looked at it like a job, not a career. And they, in my opinion, and it's a kind of thing where I was the kind of guy, like, I dig my well before I'm thirsty. Like, if there'd be a story, right? Like, I'm not just going to ask two people to come on and be like, okay, well, I got them, and I would read the notes from these people that they would put there, and they would say things like, well, we efforted this person, did this. And I'm like in Star Wars, Yoda said, it's no try or not try. You either do or don't do. Like, if you're going to do it, play to win, and do it, and recognize that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I would reach out to 20 people every time. Like, if there was, like, And news is always about context and association, and it's like, okay, what happened? Could be any story. It could be the Madoff story. It could talk about different people. And I did that story, Tiger Woods, or, Martha Stewart, or your buddy Brett Favre, you know, uh,
I,
and all that. I did a lot with Brett Favre when the
yeah.
Jenna Sturger, the woman he flashed his junk at. We were doing a lot with that story with that
Oh
woman.
man.
And then, what he seems like, God bless him, that he's been a little bit off the hook with the stuff in Mississippi, which is pretty horrible. It's the poorest state of the
Yeah.
country. And he's like, but in any case, Judy asked a question about Restaurant. Restaurant we didn't have any conditions with him beforehand. He said, like, there's going to be certain things that I can't speak about, and we can, and I'll just say it, but we have to ask you. There are no deals. We would have kept living if we didn't get them. And I think that's what some people don't realize. Like, for me personally, like, I grew up, like I mentioned, that woman, Shelley Ross. And I remember I had an interview with Good Morning America. It was supposed to be on September 11th, 9/11. And so I couldn't do it. But I remember, then I interviewed her like 2 months later after all that. And I wound up going to CBS rather than Good Morning America. I'd been at ABC Radio at the time. But she was like, Steve, I know you're this really good radio person, but TV is different. Like, you're going to go here and somebody's going to meet somebody at the airport and say they're with Good Morning America and they're from the Today Show and it's bitterly competitive. And I remember saying, Shelley, like, I think, like, you could be out of place, to be of the place. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm going to do what I do and do it the right way or whatever it is. And you're not, going to worry about that. So, to that express, like, I think that some people who haven't been in TV that long, the stakes were incredibly high in TV. Do you know what I'm saying? It meant hundreds of thousands of dollars on bookings. There was a lot of pressure.
Right.
I'll give an example. One of the Super Bowls I did, when the Saints won, I stayed up all night and we had the Super Bowl, and I'm standing there next to Drew Brees, and like we had the Super Bowl, and I stayed up all night when they beat I think they beat the Colts, and Drew Brees, like, Robin Roberts comes over with her booker and is like, hey Drew, why don't you come over? And I was like, absolutely not. And like, because if that morning, like, they're flipping on their control room and they have me down there to secure this, and we had the Super Bowl, and like, the idea was you get a bump, right? Like, people are watching the Super Bowl night, that Monday morning, they're going to keep with the station that has it. And so they were trying to snake Drew Brees. And I said, Drew, you're doing us, then you can go to Guantanamo Bay. And then they were like, Steve Cohen called us Guantanamo Bay. I said, no, and so it was funny. But I remember that was fun because we were at the Mandarin Oriental in Miami, and then he was like, can I get you a coffee? Drew Brees, we had coffee before the hit. He was walking over, and I was like, dude, your cash is trash. I got this. And so, and it was just funny. But I remember staying up all night. My point is, there's 100 stories like that, like the Jessica Lynch story. Like, I had to fly to West Virginia. There was a lot, and it was intense. And you had to, Tiger Woods, we did a lot of that story. Remember, like, for 25 straight days, he was on the front page of the New York Post, like, Tiger's a cheetah, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, like, it was, so this is not the same level of competition. Like, I feel like we dodgeball, like, if you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. Like, that was super intense. And that you would, like, wake up in the middle of the night and you would feel like, oh shit, did other shows have that person? So, it's not the same. So for other people who are casting all these kind of nefarious kind of motives on us, or kind of like feeling like it's not like that. We want, and I come from a news background, and I feel like I'd always want to hear from a lot of people And I think there was people who were like, well, I don't want to hear from them or this or that. And
Mhm.
that's not my background. I just felt like you cast a wide net. You want to
Right.
hear from different perspectives. And it's also, like I said, it's like we're bartenders. We want to give people what they want, not what we want. And that was partly part of my admonition to Joel and Carmela, you know, when in the beginning it's like, you know, I think people feel like, wow, we're so interesting, we're so funny. And I think like you have to give people what they want. And then, it's kind of like look at people like Adam Schefter, who's amazing at what he does. I went to college with him, and he worked at the school paper, but people care about his opinions on things only after he gave them everything they want. They want to know, oh, is Aaron Rodgers hurt? Or are they trading this person? Or is this person waived? And then he could be a personality. Then Stephen A. Smith could be a personality, or all these
Right.
people. First, you have to give people what they want, and it's
Right.
still the old Zig Ziglar, you can get whatever you want, helping enough other people get what they want,
Right.
And so,
Right. Right.
yeah, I hope I answered people's questions, but
Oh, totally, totally. I want to transition a little bit. I want to know, we want to know, why, what about the Massachusetts versus Karen Reed trial
yeah,
is interesting to you? What's intriguing to you?
okay.
And have you been
Um,
watching every
yeah,
day?
I've been watching it, and I feel a little overwhelmed. And then I realized, like,
Mhm.
and that's the thing where I give Joel a lot of credit because he's sitting there. They're live streaming it. We have 2 channels, and he's watching it. And there's a part of me that I have the attention span of a firefly, and I'm like, make me watch the whole trial. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so I give Joel credit. I mean, and I think he knows it better than I do, or a lot of these cases, in part because I am spread thin. But he's excellent at what he does, and so is Ileana. But I mean, I think so the Karen Reed case, for those who aren't as familiar, Karen Reed's like a 44-year-old woman from Massachusetts, and she's a professional woman. She was a professor, she was a financial analyst. She had a boyfriend named John O'Keefe, who was 46, and he was a police officer. And in January of 2022, so a year and a half ago, they go out drinking at these clubs, these bars in Boston, and then they go to this police officer's friend. I believe he was also a police officer's house, and something happens. He winds up dead, John O'Keefe, and there she is being tried for murder.
Right.
And there's a group of people who feel like she's being framed, and there's corruption in Canton, Ohio. And, I've been watching it, because I always look, even like in anything I do, I always find like an interesting story, really interesting,
Mhm.
no matter what it is, um, and there's a lot of divisiveness over that story. I think that, I mean, I don't know exactly what the truth is. You know what I mean? And I think it's weird because it's, I was listening to Vinnie Politan and other people cover this, and Boston, they're giving it wall to wall coverage, and they have, all those stations have it, and they were saying that it's the most divisive court case since like OJ Simpson. And that was
Mm.
a different kind of divisiveness, but essentially he's a cop, and they're kind of like, well, how did he die? Like the prosecution says that Karen Reed ran him over, backed into him at 25 miles an hour, killed him, even said, I did it. Did I hit him? Or, kind of admitted it. But then there's a group of people who feel like she's being framed for it, that he was in the house, he had bruises on him, he had all of he's missing his shoe, they didn't preserve the evidence. Like today in court, it is kind of like, Keystone Cops. I mean, they were collecting the evidence with like the red Solo cups you see at like fraternity parties, and like the
Mhm.
ShopRite garbage bags. So they weren't treating it like a real crime scene.
Right.
Certainly like this is a pier. And so there's a lot of room for doubt. They wonder whether or not they overcharged. Like if you said like, okay, it's accidental manslaughter or whatever it is, fine. But to say that it was intentional, I mean, she was 3 sheets to the wind. She probably had 8 or 9 drinks. They were fighting. And I think it's, there was somebody we had on the show 8 months ago named Aiden Carney who goes by Turtle Boy,
Turtle
and
Boy.
he.
I was there for that.
Oh, you were there? Oh, wow, wow. And
I'll
yeah,
never forget that show.
and how? Yeah, what was Helen saying about the leaf blower? Because I
I
like
mean, just all of it. She was, yeah,
yeah,
just all
yeah,
of it. They're just making, yeah,
and
yeah,
and so, um, yeah, I think it's and tomorrow night we're going to do a good show with this guy Joseph Krowski, Peter Elican, and this guy Todd McCain's, who are all Boston area residents, who I think are really good. And we had on last Monday we had this woman Jennifer Roman, who's a Boston area attorney, and she accused Turtle Boy of getting a car by
yes.
Karen Reed's brother. Then he cast aspersions on that, but I think he's doing stuff that's not so kosher. You know, hate mail is at, again, Joel Waldman at hatemail.com about
Oh
that. That's a
no,
gross
is
joke.
he? Oh,
No, no, I'm saying like Joel was saying, okay, if you have any hate mail, send it to, you
right.
know,
Oh, right, 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 right,
I
right,
mean,
right.
but I mean, like, I'm sorry, Aiden, I appreciate your zealotry, but not everything you're doing is kosher, you know, but we appreciate your advocacy. You're obviously capable in getting a lot of people wound up about it. Like I was talking to one of the lawyers that we were going to have on, like I felt at different environments I worked at, and you could speak at it too, Dawn, or I'm sure any of us, like I would look at either young people who I didn't think were that effective, and I would kind of be like, are you dumb or lazy? And so I feel like with some of these people, like it's like they're incompetent. I don't know necessarily how corrupt you are. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, you know, I'm sure there's a proclivity to kind of protect your own, today in court. Um,
Mhm.
Yannetti, the defense witness, was like they had a woman, like it's a small town, everybody knows everybody. And that woman who was one of the first responders, they were saying, do you know the family from the house? They were kind of intimating that she would have been protecting her. And she's like, I know she is. We're acquaintances. We're not friends. And then they go online, you see all these pictures of her with her. And then they're now saying like she's perjuring. And I don't know if they're overreaching. I think she could have been more forthcoming,
Yeah, they're
uh,
not
you know,
perjury. Yeah,
right. But it was like, but I guess like in all these cases, some of the ideas like, well, um, you know, that you just need one juror, you just need reasonable doubt. And
right,
maybe there is,
right.
and so I don't know, but it's
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I mean, they were very, very drunk.
yeah,
Now, Karen didn't. If for anyone listening who's not familiar, the only thing I will add to that excellent summary is that Karen. It wasn't until Karen went home, went to bed, woke up, and he wasn't there. Where she went back and found him laying in the snow, and then was saying, "Did I hit him? Did I hit him?" But she was still probably drunk. You're right, because she drank. They were all drinking so much, and one of the things I wondered about is the lieutenant was on today, who was supposed to be kind of like the guy in charge, and and I was talking about this earlier. He came in and he was testifying that because there was some broken glass that appeared to be from a cocktail glass.
yeah,
He
yeah,
said it was, we just assumed it was from the bar. They were at the bars, which I guess Karen must have told them. Why would you assume that a glass would have been taken in the car?
right.
Why wouldn't you think it was from the house? Like, do people in Boston just get drunk and drive around with the glasses of alcohol? Like, is that, does everybody walk out with their glass? Or why would he say that? He just would have assumed, so, assumed that. That would be the last thing I would think, honestly.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so I feel like that cocktail glass is that's a little strange. And then I couldn't remember what the other big hole was, but I feel the same way. It's kind of 50-50. I don't know who to believe or whether to believe anyone.
Like I'll give you an example. Like, we're talking about like Roberta Glass. Like she has like we've had this woman named Wendy Murphy on,
Oh,
who I worked for a
yes.
long time with Wendy, and
She seems great until that one show.
oh, you thought
With,
she was
with,
off the rails? Yeah, that
well,
was
with
like,
Turtle Boy, it was just yeah, it was so strange because she does such great work. She's
and
so,
then she was heading into she was rolling around in the mud with
yeah, and
Christine Turner.
interrupting, and Joel had to mute her, and it was like, just chill
Yeah,
out. If you're, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, it was weird.
That notwithstanding, like her son is this guy Grant Smith Ellis, and he's always on with Roberta Glass, and he's
Okay.
some ways he's the yin to Turtle Boy's yang. And so if you listen
Ah,
to them, but if you listen to Roberta, and again, kudos to Roberta, you know, but if you
right,
listen to them, they're the prosecution is killing them. They have them. And you know what I mean? Then you listen to Turtle Boy, you listen to Melanie Little, you listen to the Young Jerks, like, you know, whoever else is doing this on it. Most of the people are
whoops,
kind of like, you know, yeah, you have some graphics up
right,
there. No, but I'm saying, so I think that, um, I, you know, it's people are biased, and I think, and it, look, this is one of the kind of casualties of TV news where like people used to want to be informed, right? And you know, now people listen to things for affirmation, right? Like you listen to Fox if you like Donald Trump to hear about how he's going to make America great again or whatever. You listen to MSNBC and you want, yeah, we got him, you know, or he's going to go to jail or, you know, so it's different than, I don't know if there ever was a time like that. There probably was with Walter Cronkite or other people or news, maybe with Edward R. Murrow. Like it's just, there's just so many different news, you know, you could listen to it and just be in your echo chamber and just see
right,
what you want to see, you know,
right,
like,
right.
and I frankly haven't watched it that closely, you know,
Mhm.
you know, but I'm kind of watching it from 10,000 feet up, you know. Um, but yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it's gonna be very interesting. I mean, like
Yeah,
I've seen some really bright people, and nobody's good. Nobody I've spoken to thinks like, wow, these people did such an amazing job with the evidence and sealing off
right,
or going into the house, like who are, you know, who are doing things there. They think it's pretty you know, reprehensible, you know?
right. That's true. Even people who want to think that she did do this, and then the question is, did she do it on purpose or on accident? So
Yeah.
that's another whole. And so here's another creator that I like to. How come this isn't working right? There we go. In How come this isn't?
Well, let me ask you, Don, what got you into the, like, what are some of the true crime stories that you got interested in? Why? Like, I imagine some of the same reasons that I offered are similar to you with the Karen Reed story.
Um, it's funny because I was never. I'm going to take this off for a second because it's going to be distracting. I want to share this in a sec. Okay, how do I pause it? Okay, there we go. Sorry. I just don't want it flashing. So that's a good question. Kind of like football and sports when COVID happened and we're all stuck in. Okay, we're all stuck inside for a while. Um, I got and there was news like there was the Derek Chauvin
Yeah.
killing. Yep, of
George Floyd.
right. And so I watched that trial. I was committed. I'm like, I want to watch that trial when it happens. And it was live streamed, the whole thing. I watched the whole thing, and I'm very squeamish and I don't like violence. In fact, I don't watch the news for that reason. I can't deal with all that. But I did make myself watch it, and I enjoyed the chat, the live chat, and all of that. And because of that, YouTube started like feeding me trials and stuff. And and then I found mentor lawyer in the Dan Markel, the Wendy Adelson interrogation. And so I really got into that, just kind of dissecting it because people were saying, oh, I was just seeing the comments about this Wendy, and I was looking at the interrogation, wondering if I would have the same opinion. And I just think that I find a lot more subtleties than what people talk about. And so I was determined to watch those trials too. First, it was Katie and Sigfredo, and then it was Katie again. And then I realized, because I was a victim of crime as a child, that's probably one of the reasons I shied away from violence, news, violent movies, all of that, because who needs it, right? It was my,
Yeah.
but then they started becoming therapeutic to me. And so trial watching to me has become somewhat therapeutic. I'm still involved in the probation, writing to the probation board for the person who committed the crime when I was a child. He's still alive and in prison. And so
Is he gonna get out, or?
I don't think so. He's
Okay.
he got life, and but in Wisconsin there is no such thing as no parole. It's against the Wisconsin Constitution, so they have to give him the opportunity. Yeah.
It's like in Florida, they would say like life means life.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have to give them the opportunity to, reach goals and take classes and all these things. But he's been in there since I was 11. He's been in there for 50. Well, he murdered Rosie 50 years ago. Last year, it was 50 years. So, yeah. So, but I found trial watching kind of empowering in a way, and therapeutic. After all these years of just being like, like,
right, to help us,
right, like sheltering from anything. It's like I'd rather know. I mean, because that's how I got away from this guy. I was a kid, but I was smart enough to not just do that. I ran and I got away, and I told the authorities and my mom and all that. So it made a difference in terms of my survival.
Followed crime in like decades, and then it's
not at all. Right.
You were, when you did any of those big crime stories resonate with you before this? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I would say that before this, like when Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped, I had a very hard time with, and just seeing it on the national news, I was very upset about that.
That's a story I covered closely, actually. I went to Utah a lot for that, and got some of the smarts, and they would joke, because one of my friends was like, "You're in Utah so much, you're like Brigham Cohen." And smarts are amazing people. And I was actually pleased, like the other day, that you saw her. She was in a bathing suit, like, she looked really great. And I remember, like, watching her move on and say, I'm not going to let this define me. And she did other stuff.
Right.
And that, so, and that's it too. Like, you think about certain situations, how do some people have resilience and a lot of support and people around you, and but I think I
was lucky.
But that's also why I think that's one reason why we want to see people like Ruth Markel, or the Greenbergs, and I think some of it's like we go through tough times and then we're like, well, it could have been so much worse for me or for you or for anybody. That's human nature.
Right.
One of my friends always thinks it's like a good idea to do a podcast called "So You Think You've Got Problems," and that's true, right? It's like, I think Brooks had a version of that, like, oh, you break your leg, it's an injury, but I hurt my pinky, it's a tragedy, or something, or something like that. But yeah, I think people want to see people who are resilient. People want to have compassion for other people. People want to see there to be justice, because you hope, like, if the Markels get justice, then there's it's justice for everybody, right? Like, it's justice for all. It's not justice for some. And
Mhm.
And we want to see justice, whatever the case may be, for Karen Reed. Like,
Right.
to Turtle Boy's credit, like he's starting every single time he speaks to say justice for John O'Keefe. He's not
Good.
saying, you know what
Good.
I mean? But he feels
Yes.
like showing that John O'Keefe was framed is what is equivalent to justice. Now, Karen Reed, in her drunken stupor, backed down and did it. And if they can prove it and this jury buys it, but I think, some of your commenters referred to that, though, like, people see what they want to see. Like, I'm telling you,
Mhm.
I was listening to Roberta Glass today, and I was listening to Turtle Boy, and I was listening to Melanie Little. And now I think the Melanie Littles and Turtle Boys and the other people who were casting aspersions, one guy kept calling him Chief Wiggum. And I'm like, is the guy's name Wiggum? And I was like, wait, that's the guy from The Simpsons. Just like how incompetent they were,
They were.
and you're kind of like, are you watching the same trial? But I
Yeah,
feel like they have a lot of ammunition, the defense. There was a lot
they
that
do. They
more
do.
than more than in the Markout case with the double secret extortion or whatever.
Right, right. I wonder what Chad Daybell's going to come up, because he's
Oh,
starting to sound like
yeah. Oh,
Charlie's
interesting.
defense, like an answer for everything.
Oh,
And Hey Mona says, I watched every minute of the Dan Markel trials and interviews, all the hearings too. It's infuriating to see people go on with their free lives, right? Yeah, I think so. For me, it was never conscious. In fact, my life, I kind of was encouraged, let's just say, to repress my memories, and then suddenly they weren't repressed anymore, and I ended up having kind of a meltdown for a while, and because they all came rushing back in the form of PTSD. But I've never defined myself by what happened to me, but I think it definitely had a big bearing on how I turned out. I was lucky to have survive and get away and all those things, and have a family and a support system at school, school and neighborhood and all that. That I made it through okay. But a lot of people aren't that lucky, but that, I think, is why I'm so interested in the process in trials. I wish that federal trials were broadcast live stream, just like
Yeah.
some of the states are. And I had mentioned earlier that the rate of conviction for federal crimes is over 99%.
Wow.
Over, right. So they better be getting it right. And so I think it's good to have like Turtle Boys around. He may not be right. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know. And that's kind of the whole point of my channel, is like potential juror. Like, we're supposed to presume innocence. We're supposed to be sitting here like we don't know anything until we're given the evidence, and we should only take the evidence into account, not what we might know because we're on YouTube every day. It's so the jurors might not know what we know. So, and if you're ever on a jury, you're not supposed to take into, all this outside information into account. You're supposed to just take the evidence into account. And I think the process is really important, because a lot of people get convicted when they should, like what happened in my life. But there are a few that don't too. And I just think it's important for me personally, to to see it happen. And yes, so it is fairly recent. The only trial I was interested is Chauvin and Dan Markel, but now I watch Melanie Moore. It's like a thing. It's just like a thing now. So, um, somebody was doxing jurors. That's terrible. I'm interested. There's a trial coming up here locally that I would very much like to sit at, and just kind of not to dox the jurors, but just to kind of pay attention to the jury
No,
process.
you have enough for jurors. I know
No,
you.
no, no, no. I would never do that, because I really respect their privacy. But okay,
Your
so
new,
let me
your
quick.
new, your new podcast, potential docs jurors. But
Let, Oh, Turtle Boy was doxing. Oh dear, that's not good. That's not good. Okay, so here's what I
Well,
just
that's why
wanted.
he was arrested for 60 days
Right,
for intimidating witnesses.
he intimidating witnesses, but I
Yeah.
didn't know he was. How would he be doxing the jurors? I thought he was. I thought he was kept out of the
Witnesses.
trial.
I mean, the trial didn't start, but even the other day, he was following somebody around who was on the witness stand.
Oh no.
I mean, who was going to be a witness. He was filming him, and the guy, and him were verbally sparring. So, but yeah,
Okay. Oh, I did see that. I did see that.
yeah,
I saw what he posted. It's funny. I saw it on Twitter when he posted and tagged ST. Oh,
yeah.
I saw STS post, and then I looked at his, and yeah,
I I don't know. I think some of the stuff he does, you have to call balls and strikes. Some are
right,
good and some are bad.
right,
And
right,
I'm sorry, you can't do some of the stuff he's doing.
right. I haven't paid enough attention to everything that he's doing to know,
Thank
but I
you,
do.
Society page. I
Right,
agree. He's
right.
bad with bears. I agree. I'm gonna call it.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Society page. You're right.
Okay, briefly, I want to just share something from another content creator. Whoops, I did it again. Okay, so this comes from uh, Madness and Motive YouTube.
Yeah, he's very good. Or is she?
Yes,
I think it's a he. Yeah.
I think yeah, it's a he. And
Yeah.
where does it go? Okay, okay. So he did more than this
And he
graph.
does deep work, by the way. I mean, like,
What he
watched
does
him
is
a
it's
while, but he
data.
does.
Yeah.
He's talented. He's like society
Yes.
page, fancy fiction. There, Judy.
So he does.
Where's Judy? Is she figure skating? Is she baking banana bread? I don't see her.
I think she might be have had to stop off for dinner or something.
She
Okay,
might
so
have had bullet bourbon. I know Judy.
he did something really he did several data analysis because so he's data based. So a lot of people are wondering if Judge Bev is biased or not. Okay, that was kind of the title of his
Yeah,
YouTube video. And he did several charts, but I just kind of captured this one. And the charts are great. You can go to the video and look in his description, and you can click on all of these, and they're interactive, and it's really great. So, but one of the things I think is important to note here is and so he was saying this chart reflects Judge Beverly Cannon's responses to objections from the prosecution and from the defense in the Karen Reed trial. So, of the green ones are objections that were sustained or held up, and then the red ones he's calling it allowed, but that would be overruled. So if somebody objected, it would have been overruled. So, but here's what's interesting. He didn't talk about this, but I noticed it on his chart. So the the prosecution had 10 of their objections sustained. The defense had 7. However, the defense had the judge called them over to sidebar 5 times and 0 times for the prosecution. And to me, that's something I've noticed about trials. If you're not really familiar, or even if you are familiar with the process that's going on, you're told by the judge as a juror, don't worry about the sidebars. That's just us dealing with things, blah blah blah. But the thing is, if you have a judge, and this is only 4 days, who's constant, and then she's so rude about it. It's not like, um, attorneys, could we have a sidebar brief? She's like, sidebar. She's really mean. So if she's doing that to the defense only, and the juror's sitting there for those minutes, and sometimes it ends up being a break, wondering what's going on, it's making the defense, in my opinion, look bad.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not technically supposed to, but I think that's worse than having uh, had something sustained that you
yeah,
objected to or not or overruled. So, depending on which side you're looking at it. So, I just wanted to kind of bring that out because there's a lot of just kind of being rude to the defense team.
Yeah,
Uh, do you see that? Do you feel like that?
see that a little bit. I mean, I've heard people who are inclined to think that, yeah, you know, yeah, it seems like she's more deferent to the prosecution.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it that carefully, but
right.
to be the impression I've gotten just from like, I kind of watch it here or there and then listen to the recaps, I
Yeah.
think NBC Boston has this thing, Canton Confidential. I've been watching that every day. I try and
Oh, okay.
I
I
think
was
that's pretty
watching their live
good.
stream. I didn't know they had a show, but
Yeah, they do a recap every night.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of time, like if I'm live streaming a lot about a trial, and I'm not with Karen Reed, I won't listen to any of the coverage or any of the
Oh,
recaps. I
interesting.
try to just be as like I'm trying to be like a juror would be. I'm trying to pretend like I'm presuming innocence and just listening to the evidence until later, and then I take it all in. Yeah. So, but in Karen Reed's case, that's not the case. The only reason I haven't done that is because there's also the Chad Daybell trial, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get all the testimony into my brain and all of that too. So, yeah. Well, so what got you interested in Karen Reed? What is it about Karen Reed's trial? Just
I think like it has, I mean, she can go to jail for life for this, so it has stakes, it has consequences. I think whenever you see that much of a gulf between one side and the other,
hmm
and
hmm
you know, I talked earlier, I think I said the four C's, right, in a trial, like characters, consequences, conflict, and comedy. It has that. It certainly has characters. I think Turtle Boy, for better or for worse, he's brought a lot of attention to it. You know what I mean?
hmm
And so I think, like him or hate him, and I agree with Society Page. It's bad news.
hmm
He's not just a
Okay.
journalist. He's an agitator, and he's not revealing everything he should reveal. And some of
hmm
the stuff, the pushback he got was warranted, and but I think that he brought a lot of attention to it, and I just think it is. You don't see that often. You don't see 100 people outside of a courtroom
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
they're wearing pink or just kind of disparaging, cops and and so and authority, and then people see what they want to see. I've listened to different podcasts, and you hear all these people with really strong Boston accents, and they're saying, well, it's like with Whitey Bulger, or
Oh,
what I mean, or like there is corruption for sure. Uh, and I agree with Society Page, and I do think she must have hit him with a car. Like I don't think it was quite like what they're saying, which there's different things there, and somebody was telling me, like, if you go back and watch Matt Gutman's interview with her on ABC from 8-9 months ago, she admits she hit him with the car. Do you know what I mean? So, like any good lawyer, like we have Tim Jansen a lot, will say you never let your client speak that much. It's kind of like, how do you catch a fish when its mouth is open? Like you catch them, and she's now contradicting herself with it, or saying, I didn't say that.
okay.
Or they're saying it's like it's my cousin Vinny. Like I shot the clerk. Not, you know what I mean? That's kind of what
hmm
they're saying. And
hmm
I
hmm
think and just the kind of animosity they had towards each other. She was drunk. She kind of said it in the beginning. I don't think all those people are going to lie. I find it curious, though. There is a lot of room for doubt. Like, why wouldn't you put it in the police report? And a
Why
lot of
didn't they arrest her
arrest her. Yeah,
right there? Like,
yeah, yeah.
what's going on? Yeah, that I thought was
They
weird
didn't
too.
go into the house.
Yeah,
Whether or not you had
yeah.
probable cause or certain, and a lot of these people were talking about how, we grew up as like we were a medic or we were a paramedic, and like they said, unless it's on the page, it didn't happen. You know what I mean? So like they're instructed to be incredibly detailed, and
Right,
not have errors
right,
of omission. So it
right.
does seem odd, but I think a broad conspiracy is, I don't know. It's
Hmm.
hard to
Right.
imagine. and it's kind of like, I mean, maybe she didn't mean to kill him, but it's like, she was lit like a menorah. She had 9 drinks. She's backing up, and she says that she hit him at the first time. And I don't know about all those other things. How come there wasn't a tail light? What happened with the glass in his hand? Why was the shoe off? I mean, Vinnie Politan had Steve Peterson, who we have on Surviving the Survivor a lot, who was a detective in the Murdoch case for Stephen Smith. When he got hit by a car, his shoes fell off or whatever, like, so it's possible you get hit by a car, your shoe's going to fall off. I don't
Yeah.
have all the answers,
If
but I
if
feel
you're
like,
going fast enough, it'll come off. The shoes will come off for sure.
but I
Yeah.
feel like, and I don't know about the dog bites. I know about all the other bites
Yeah.
on him, or like, did they beat him up inside and then put him on? Like, I don't know. I feel like she still hit him. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. So maybe she hit him, and then the dog went out and attacked him.
Yeah.
And then in there, like, they were covering up for the dog. I've thought about that.
But certainly there's a lot of room for, for like confusion, right? Or for,
Sure.
so,
Doubt.
but I think it's, I mean, it's a lot, like, I'm sure your listeners will agree, like, it's a lot like, the Murdoch case. I mean, you feel like you're in Massachusetts, right? Like,
I
between the
know.
and
Yeah.
and when you're in South Carolina, you got a flavor for what it is to
Hmm.
be in that part of the country,
Yeah.
and yeah, no,
Right. I
and I,
don't think they checked for dog DNA. Then the dog, they could have checked the dog, but the dog was,
yeah.
they never did. And then the dog was given away, rehomed. The house was sold. That's also weird.
And by the way, it shows you like also have some compassion, because like I was talking to one of the lawyers in Boston who handled a lot of big cases, because you read the comments and they're like, oh, look at Karen Reed's face or this or that. And like, I was reading, like, she I think has multiple sclerosis, so that's not easy,
No.
like, to
Right.
deal with, so I mean, something happened. I mean, if you listen to O'Keefe's brother and the family over there, like, they had a very kind of volatile, hateful relationship. And she's screaming at him, I hate you, you pervert, whatever it is. And there's spats, but is it plausible to me that they can go out, get drunk, get into a fight, and she's not all there because she's drunk, and speeds off and then says, go to hell, I'm going home, whatever happens happens, and then is surprised he died, I mean, or was scared he died. She didn't mean to kill him, she was just angry and
Right.
snapped. I mean, I think that seems plausible. I mean, that's with any of these situations, they're selling a story. In the case I probably know best, the in the case like that we know best, probably the Adelson case, that story didn't compute. Like, these people, the double extortion thing, like, they're going to kill somebody, then ask for it on layaway, and that,
Right.
somebody, this one, though, to me,
Right.
it's kind of like that story, like in Society Page is acknowledged as much too. It's like, it
Hmm.
seems plausible to me. You get out, you're at a kind of lovers, but you're volatile. He's cheating on you, you're cheating on him. You're all lubricated, you're hammered. It's 2 a.m, whatever it is, and then he says something you don't like. You get to the car, you're like, screw you. I mean, any one of us, to be honest with you, I mean, I could lose my temper and do something I didn't mean to. I think they overcharged her, right? Like, it shouldn't be, I don't know what you know what I mean, intentional, or it could be involuntary manslaughter. And that's what some of the legal eagles I've spoken to,
Right. That's what I think
like,
too.
it's like, okay, like, that would seem, easier to prove, and but they're muddying the waters, and it only takes one person,
Yeah. Yeah. It only takes one juror.
yeah.
So why didn't they? Yeah. So evidently, John wanted to go into the house for the party, and Karen didn't. So she dropped him off there, and
It's
with
probably
his
like, screw you, go see your cop friends, bye.
something
And
like that.
yeah,
Maybe. Well, it was late. She was probably, ready to go home. But I'm interested to see what they do with this evidence supposedly that's coming up where her car information, computer system shows her, and this hasn't come up yet at the trial, so I'm just hearing that it's going to, that her car
Well,
went
that's
for
what did Murdoch
60
in, right? I mean,
feet,
that stuff's
60 feet for 24 miles an hour in
right.
reverse. That's not easy to actually
No,
do in a straight line in the snow. And that's how, then if she was going that fast, I could see doing a lot more damage. But just when you're backing up in, I don't know. So I'm interested in seeing that testimony.
I wouldn't even know how to test it. You know what I'm saying? I'd be scared to test it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm gonna back up like that fast. You know what I mean? Like 24
Right.
miles an hour. Like it
Well,
takes a
you're
while to get up to that. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like if you're backing,
right.
like I
Yeah.
think sometimes when like I'm going 5 miles an hour, 10 miles, and that seems like fast. You know what I'm saying? Because you're always worried about hitting something when you're backing up. You know what I mean? If like
Right.
you're at a parking lot or something and somebody's trying to pull in and you back up or you made the wrong turn. I think she
Yeah.
made a 3-point turn. I mean, like there's going to be a lot of evidence. It's going to be mind
Right.
numbing. There's going to be 70 different people there. And who knows if people's minds are already made up, and who knows if there's going to be recency bias or whatever. But I think we're all intrigued by it. And, I heard
Mhm.
some people in Boston say, like, if it wasn't for the Trump trial, this one would really, capture more people's attention, or the
Right.
data.
I wish the Trump trial
I
was
feel like we
nuanced.
already had, by the way, Tim Jensen's doing a very good job commenting on the Trump trial for ABC. I think he's been doing a very good
Oh,
job.
is he? Okay.
Yeah. But
Harvest back.
but I feel like Karen Reed like wanting to go to sleep because it's 10:30 here. Because if
Yes,
I want
it's ready. We're
I
ready
want
to rock and
if I
roll.
want to
Okay.
if I want to soar with the Eagles, I can't be out with the night owls.
There you go. There you go. I'm getting a little tired too. Well, you guys, thank you for all the great questions for
Thanks,
Steve.
Helen. Yeah.
It's been
Thanks,
super, super fun to get to have everybody get to
yeah.
know you a little bit
Mona,
better.
thank you very much. It's an honor. Yeah. We'll have to have you on Survivor and the Survivor, and we'll have to do it. Maybe with Judy.
Judy's the best. And Society Page,
Yeah, Society Page. Will you come on? Society Page, you need to come on.
was the Society Page mentioned coming on? I mentioned
I hope you have him come on with
coming
you.
on here with you, so you guys can
Oh, I
talk.
would love to use Society Page. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Talk
I
about
think that
me.
would be a great show.
Yeah,
I think that would be a
Society
great
Page.
show.
I'd be down to get down.
That would be fun, but we can't
Yeah.
keep you up so
Oh,
late.
thanks, True Crime
So
Wifey. Thank you, True Crime Wifey.
it's so good
Yeah.
to see you all. Well, thanks
You're so
everyone.
much. I love you all. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
You're very
It's a lot of
welcome.
fun. And KIT, keep in touch. We'll talk.
Absolutely.
Thank
Okay,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Real pleasure. Thank you. Okay,
Bye for now.